This is Jesus, James, and Mark, and I'm Mark.
And I'm James.
Welcome to episode 60. This is a show about Jesus, the Word of Jesus, God. And it is done by two gentlemen, two ordinary guys who identify as Christians, who are, again, we are just non-pastors, non-Bible scholars. We consider ourselves everyday Joes, as they say, like you out there, everyday Joes and Janes, I guess.
Janes and Joes.
I'm not a Jane. I would be a Joe. But that being said, we're just here to talk about the Word. We've been talking about the book of Genesis, and we're going to continue that discussion today. And it's whenever you're listening, and we know you may start listening to this at some point, and this could be, I don't know, August. It's Christmas time. We are literally, tomorrow is Christmas Eve.
Yes.
Like in real time, it's Christmas Eve tomorrow for us. So we're going to actually have a Christmas discussion, because I think that's always something that, as a Christian, people are always having a conversation about. Is Christian a pagan thing? Is it not is it, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to talk about that and get back into our Genesis. But I just wanted to say, look, we're two ordinary guys exploring the Word of God, and we're inviting you to join us. You can listen to our podcast on platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcast and iHeart and Amazon Audible, and find us on YouTube. Really want you to find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook as well. Jesus, James, and Mark. And, like, subscribe, be a part of it, interact with us, send us a message, an email at jesusjamesmark@gmail.com. So, like as I said, share the experience, rate it. If you listen on Apple Podcast, or, as I said, drop us a comment. We'd love to hear from you.
And as Mark said, we're just two ordinary guys, and we try to go by 1 Corinthians 2:2, for we determine not to know anything among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. And that's where we start everything.
Yes. And where we finish it.
Oh, yeah.
It's cyclical. I'm coming off of being, I was telling Chubb and I were talking before the podcast that I'm coming off of being sick. And I mean, when I mean sick, one of the worst I've been sick in decades. So I almost feel like a new Christian. When you're happy to be alive, when you first get into this and you're just like, oh man, let me just tell you about Jesus. I feel that way about just, man, I am awake. I have an appetite. I'm really excited to be back and doing this. And I'm excited to be feeling better before we hit this time, which again, all of my kids, and I feel like Christmas becomes this big thing that it's kids only. And we got to stop that. It is, kids have the most amazing time. But do you remember what Jesus talks about, having that childlike spirit? And I think that is lost on a lot of adults this time of year, because you're supposed to have that spirit too. The kids get excited about it. And we're going to talk about all these motivations. Maybe they're motivated by the wrong things. Well, whose fault is that? Well, anyways, we're going to get into all that because, as I said, though, I love this time of year. I do think that a lot of people who take it seriously, because we're celebrating the birth of the Messiah, and that's what this is about, that part of it is, and again, I think even people in the secular, I would say Jesus world, a lot of times, like, well, you got to have that holiday spirit, just be a little kinder, be a little nicer. And again, it's interesting though, because one of the big debates is this an old pagan holiday right, that the Christians are just, we've just moved on to this. So we figured we'd take a few minutes kind of tackling a little of these issues.
I did look into the whole pagan side of it.
Yes.
And I'm going to recommend, and we don't do this a lot, but I'm going to recommend, if you have any questions or if you want to see a different perspective on the pagan intermingling of Christmas, check out Wes Huff on YouTube, and the title of his his episode is called "Christmas Isn't Pagan, and Here's Why." And I think Wes Huff is one of the most educated, most articulate speakers on historical evidence for biblical and non-biblical things.
Yes.
I thought it was a great podcast. He goes through a lot of things: Santa Claus, Christmas trees, the date, the December 25th.
Yes.
All of those things are discussed in there.
And that's part of I was going to say, that's part of our big thing too. If you're new to the podcast, you haven't caught all of this, that we try to apply a lot of the intellectualism. Again, this is not about intellectualism, nor is it about legalism.
No.
It's about, but that being said, when it comes to the word and us wanting to know and to explore it, both you and I are, again, source material
bringing some evidence,
is big.
And I think Wes does a good job of not being overly pushy. And I'm not doing the same thing.
He's Canadian.
I'm yeah. I'm not telling you, if you feel convicted about some of these celebrations, go do your thing. Nobody's trying to force anybody to partake in anything, but to just lackadaisically throw it into paganism is really not historically accurate if you just do the research into any of those things we mentioned, the trees, the dates, all that stuff.
Yeah, we're going to give you and I got a little, and I don't want to take it that deep. I'm with you. If you really want to verbatim have an intellectual debate about it and have that sort of information, I agree. Wes Huff is the guy to go to in that particular video.
You've seen that video?
Oh yeah, gosh, yeah. I've totally seen. And in fact, I mean, you're gonna probably when we start having a little discussion about this, you'll be like, oh yeah, you have seen that video. and as I said, I think it's fantastic. But I want to go back to what our previous podcast we were talking about the little tiny Jesuses. And let me just say this. It's different, one, because yes, it is a Christian holiday, and I'm going to get into that in just a minute. But the whole spirit of this is, it's what you put in your heart to make it. If you're making Christmas a non-Christian thing, it's really something you've got to look inward at yourself and sort of pull out of that, because I think a lot of this, it can be. And I think one of the biggest things is expectations, and like I said, the commercialism, I completely understand.
Absolutely.
People see that and they're just like, what feels spiritual about this? I understand completely, but again, that's part of this is, you got, as I said, you got to look at it. So, and from what Wes said, and if you go back and do this and look at the references, and if you want to go even further, the early Christians started celebrating this December 25th as Christmas, as the birth of Christ, literally 4 BC or something along those lines. I mean, we're talking about the very early 4 years after. Yeah, essentially.
I thought it was interesting the way they got to December. Everybody knows that's not when Christ was born. I mean, there's no discussion about that. And the fact that he was born probably in the springtime, there was an old discussion that if you were super holy and very religious and with God's favor, you would die the same day you were conceived. So they had a 9-month thing that they were trying to figure out to like, when was he conceived? And it fell on December 25th. Yeah. And that's the story.
Yeah. So essentially it's like this. The paperwork on the death certificate is really accurate. Birth. And again, let's talk about that. This is the Christmas time of year. Remember, this was not hey, everybody, let's announce that it was like that. Yes. Yep. But remember, because of the angel that came to the wise men who went to, the King Herod, and said, hey, there's a king that's going to be born. Well, that was a weird vibe when that came. And then there was a big thing about, if you have a kid, we really want to know about it. Yep. It was not, so paperwork for probably a lot of births around those times were probably a little hazy, because parents were a little afraid to let known that their kid was born around a certain time. Least he be questioned by the
Exactly,
king. Because again, this guy was afraid for his. I mean, the wise men even saw that. If you go,
Mhm.
we're not studying, and when we did the book of Mark, it doesn't talk about the birth of
Right.
Christ at all. It just kind of goes right into his ministry.
But they wouldn't go back and report to Herod because of that. They knew
Right.
that this was the king, and that Herod didn't need to know about him.
Yeah, and they made sure to not.
Yeah.
Like it kind of after they had visited baby Jesus. So the other notes I got is, so as far as this date of the 25th, so about 114 BC, based on them going back to the 4 BC records of them trying to figure out when he was born and all of these sort of things.
So the date to me is really arbitrary, but the fact that Christians were celebrating that as the birth day, their history will show you, evidence will show you that they were doing that long before any pagan rituals were done on that day.
And yes, I do know that there are some, again, hard to find reliable sources about, Celtic or even, Norse sort of celebrations around this time of year and how those may or may not have been tied in. But the actual date, the celebration is Sol Invictus, which is a Roman celebration of the fall, which actually was around August. And from what I'm to understand, well, there's August towards the end. Well,
but none of the dates were December 25th.
but from what everything we can gather at this point was that the Roman idol worship, spending the time having these Roman celebrations, had declined as far as society. The Christians were celebrating this Christmas. Mm-hmm. And in fact, there was many who believed. I don't know if I actually wrote some of the people who did, but many diehard Roman believes that the Christian celebrations were tainting the Roman celebrations so there's also this thing about Saturnalia. Saturnalia, which was, again, anyways, Sol Invictus and all of this didn't actually appear until around 388 BC. So you're talking about a 300-year gap-ish between when Christians actually claimed this as the birth of Christ.
So the claim that Christians adopted pagan worship is really the reverse.
It's the reverse.
The pagans trying to infiltrate the Christian religion or the Christian celebrations because of the lack of attendance at their own temples.
Yeah, I think again, for most people that there had been this. For most people, the narrative has been it's a pagan holiday that Christians started throwing Christian things into to Christian it up, and it was actually pagans who have been throwing pagan things on it to, as I said, to do it the other way. And I wanted to say about this too. You go right back into the Christmas tree thing, which I often find to be one of the. And you and I have talked about the Santa Claus thing. There's obviously all of the history there, but
I did the two notes that I made were the date and the tree. I thought those were the best. They were very intriguing explanations about how these celebrations and symbols came about. And I thought the tree was fantastic.
Before I move on, something that did just hit me that is very similar to the way Christian and the way the narrative is flip-flopped. What is it? Church, state without church. I'm trying to think of the word, the government term where
separation of church.
Separation of church and state. Thank you. That actually is presented that it was brought into existence because people wanted to make sure that the church didn't taint the government. But what it actually was set up for was, if you look at the history of separation of church and state, was because the church didn't want the government coming into the church and celebrating that and tainting what they were doing. So it's very interesting how we sort of believe the narrative one way, but the truth is, when you dig in the history, the guy who came up with separation of church and state was a Christian who did not want the government to be involved in the church goings. So anyways.
A lot of Christians will use the verse in Jeremiah 10 about the cutting the tree down and putting gold and all
But
that.
that's about idols
It
in
is
context.
definitely. You've got to read that in context because it's clearly talking about somebody cutting a tree, carving an idol, and then using it for worship.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but I don't worship the Christmas tree. I don't. The original story about the Christmas tree is that it was called a paradise tree and that people would put fruit and food on it. You would eat that to remind everybody of the plentifulness of the Garden of Eden. Then you would redecorate it for the next day.
Yes.
Nowhere can you find any kind of evidence that the pagans ever thought pine trees were some sort of deity, or that they thought they were. They always used the oak tree, according to Wes Huff.
I did the same, and so I did a little extra on the same thing. And so, yeah, the Christmas tree is one of those things where, again, because there's a lot of pagan celebrations involving trees and those kind of things. And there's actually a great story about one of the Christmas tree stories about how a fir got blessed was because they chopped down this old tree that they thought Thor had control over when the guy didn't get struck down by lightning. But it's so simple. It comes down to what God intended for at the beginning. That tree is actually a representation of the tree of life. And in fact, exactly what you're talking about, where they would eat from the tree. And some of you have these southern celebrations where there would be fruit and stuff, even maybe on the stocking or something like that, something of natural. And then the next day, Jesus bringing that tree back to life with the lights, lighting up that tree again because it's the tree of life. And then there's presents under the tree, the more than enough.
Plentifulness.
The plentifulness that is, as I said. So I think it was a great study, and it goes back down to, if you're standing around a Christmas tree singing songs about Macy's and like, thank God I got some new Uggs, or I don't know what to say. Like I said, I don't, if you're going to worship the commercialism of it, or if you're going to condemn people because all you see is the commercialism of it, then I think you're probably going at it the wrong way.
Yeah, and Wes really closed that video really good by quoting Colossians 2, where it says, "So let no one judge you in food or in drink or regarding a festival or a new moon or Sabbath." Even Jesus celebrated festivals while he was on the earth. Just because you are partaking in something, if you keep Christ in the front of it, I don't think you're going down a pagan rabbit hole by having a Christmas tree with gifts under it.
Yeah, and again, as I said, I loved it,
and I would recommend everybody going and checking out that video. And you can dispute it and discuss it and have your own opinion on it. And again, I'm not trying to tell anybody to celebrate nothing. You do you.
I think as a guy, I think a lot of, and again, depends on your situation, but maybe the tree is the most aggravating part of the whole Christmas experience for you. You got to go get it. You got to, whatever, you got to set it up, all those kind of things. But the whole fact that this is a symbolism to return to Eden of what God intended for in the beginning, I think it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I think it is beautiful.
Which is what we get through Christ.
Yeah.
Is that. So, all right. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry
Christmas.
Mass.
Now, we're going to get back to reading the book of Genesis today, and we're going to try to finish this thing out as best we can and not shortchange it. We are reading in the New King James Version, and we are on Genesis. We're on 48, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, we're going to pick up right there. And as just brief recap of at least the fact that everybody's all come together now. And so Jacob is about to pass, and and so this is where we're setting this up here. Jacob going to bless his sons, bless Joseph's sons. Excuse me. Now it came to pass after these things, Joseph was told, "Indeed, your father is sick." And he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And Jacob was told, "Look, your son Joseph is coming to you." And Israel strengthened himself, sat up on the bed. Then Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me in Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me, and said to me, Behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you, and I will make of you a multitude of people, and give you this land to your descendants after you as an everlasting possession. And now your two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land of Egypt, where I came to you in Egypt, are mine. As Reuben and Simeon, they shall be mine. Your offspring, whom you begat after them, shall be yours. They will be called by the name of their brothers in their inheritance. But as for me, when I came from Padan, Rachel died beside me in the land of Canaan on the way, and there was but a little distance to go to Ephrath, and I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Then Israel saw Joseph's sons and said, Who are these? And Joseph said to his father, they are my sons, whom God has given me in this place. And he said, Please bring them to me, and I will bless them. Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, so that he could not see. Then Joseph brought them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, I had not thought to see your face, but in fact, God has also shown me your offspring. So Joseph brought them from beside his knees, and he bowed down with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh with his left toward Israel's right hand, and brought them near him. Then Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, guiding his hands knowingly, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, God, before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has fed me all my life long to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the boys. Let my name be named upon them, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac. Let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. Now when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. So he took hold of his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, Not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people. He also shall be great. But truly his younger brothers shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. So he blessed them that day, saying, By you Israel will bless, saying, May God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And thus he set Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, Behold, I am dying, but God will be with you and bring you back to the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to you one portion above your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and my bow. And that's the end of 48. Let's hit the high notes here, Chop. And
Well, I tell you what got me looking into this was the fact that when you look at a map of Israel back then, there's two names of the original 12 sons that you don't see, and that is Joseph and Levi. Levi became the priest line, so they didn't have an inheritance. They were just taken care of by the other tribes automatically. So Levi's not on the map. Joseph, however, becomes his two sons. Ephraim and Manasseh become the two other tribes that make up the 12 tribes of Israel. And to me, that was just astounding that I had never really thought about the way all of that broke down. Ephraim being the younger, and so Joseph brings them up on the sides they're supposed to be on, and then Jacob actually crosses his hands to touch them and put the bigger blessing on Ephraim. He also becomes the father, or the line where the majority of the prophets of the Old Testament come from, and the judges and all that. I thought it was a very interesting little deep dive that I did on that.
No, yeah, I'm with you on that. And then of course, I mean, because you're kind of hitting the highlight I was talking about, just the sort of the crisscross of the.
Oh yeah.
And again, it's these last few chapters are very interesting. It doesn't appear, as I said, it seems to be going through some motions.
Yeah.
But you started at the right part of this. Is a lot of this sets up, and it's going to go deeper into the next chapter about sort of, it's Israel talking, but God is speaking through him about, and it's sort of prophesying what's going to happen to these brothers and these nations as they were, the generations of family.
Yeah, and there's actually a split that's going to happen later on after they re-inherit the promised land, to where 10 tribes become northern Israel, and then you have the lower two tribes, which is Judah and Benjamin, kind of stay down to the south. And all of that is set up in what's happening right here in these last few chapters.
All right, so 49, Genesis 49. And Jacob called his sons and said, "Gather together that I may tell you what shall befall you in these last days. Gather together, hear you sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel your father." So this is not only Jacob/Israel talking to his sons. He's talking to their whole families. This is
Their
a
lineage,
big, this is a big powwow. So anyways, to set that up. Gather together and hear you sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Unstable as water, you shall not excel. Because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. We'll stop right there and just say, again, that's very interesting. He hits Reuben, who's the firstborn, all the blessing, but we go back to Genesis 20-ish,
somewhere
feels
in the 20s,
like around there, where Reuben does this thing and say, hey, remember this thing?
Yep.
It's not something to forget about, because later on it's going to be part of this. So it says, basically, I hate to paraphrase in a bad way, but I'm going to anyway. He basically goes, Reuben, you're awesome. I'm going to look out for you, but you blew it. That's kind of what it was.
And he's basically telling him that he hasn't forgiven him for that sin.
Yeah.
You know, that he did earlier.
All right. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Instruments of cruelty are in their dwelling place. Let not my soul enter their council. Let not my honor be united to their assembly. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they hamstrung an ox. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. All right, so
that's going back to Shechem, right?
Yeah, that's going back to Shechem. And
when
again,
Dinah was violated, and they went and circumcised the whole people, and then these two went and led the rebellion, I guess, and killed all the men of that place. And he said at the time that you've put me in a bad spot here.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the two longest things that Jacob talks about, the two, Joseph and the guy we're going to talk about, the two longer portions of his speech here. Judah, you are he whom your brothers shall praise. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's children shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He bows down, he lies down as a lion, and as a lion, who shall rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes. And to him shall be the obedience of the people, binding his donkey to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. Zebulun shall dwell in the haven of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his borders shall adjoin Sidon. Issachar is a strong donkey lying down between two burdens. He saw that rest was good, and the land was pleasant. He bowed his shoulder to bear a burden and became a band of slaves. Okay, whoa. Well, I went to the Issachar. We got to go back to Judah because there's this Messiah moment that's like right in the middle of this. So they're in fact, the ESV and the NIV have a better poetic way of expressing this than because the New King James is much more of a word for word translation. And so I think for us as English people, these words don't bounce off the page at you the way that they do in the NIV and the ESV. And probably would have been better to have those prepared for you. But what he's talking about here is that the line of Judah is going to be blessed. There's a mention of the scepter, which is what a king has.
Yep.
And then there's this word Shiloh, which is not a translation, but from what I understand, a transliteration of a word where they just tried to go directly to, and it's like, whose is it?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, again, it's all in this prophetic language of, this is going to be the line of kings. This is going to be a separate line. And then there's this talk of like washing, and we're going to wash in wine. Teeth are whiter than anything in the world. It's that abundance of more than, there's this like, this is going
and
to be
perfection.
Yes.
The whiteness, the fact that the note that I read about tying the donkey to the choice vine means that you have so much abundance that you can afford to put your donkey next to a thing and just let him eat at it.
Which which is a twofold thing. Which is, one, you trust there's way more than enough that the animal's not going to eat it all.
Right.
And that, secondly, it's so incredibly deep that it will hold in place. Can you imagine a vine that is going to hold your donkey in place?
Right.
Like it's gigantic. There's way more than enough. The donkey will get full and pass out. So,
so
Judah, as I said,
Judah and Jacob both get a very a good prophetic blessing from Joseph.
Dan, on the other hand, that's where we're at now. Go down to 16. Not so much so. Dan shall judge his people. Speaking of the book of Judges, the tribe of Dan is all in there. So, as one of the tribes of Israel, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, a viper by the path, that bites the horse's heels so that its rider shall fall backward. I have waited for your salvation, O Lord. Gad, a troop shall tramp upon him, and he shall triumph at last. Bread from Asher shall be rich, and he shall yield dainties. Naphtali is a deer let loose. He uses beautiful words. Joseph is a fruitful bow by a well. His branches run over the wall. The archers have bitterly grieved him, shot at him and hated him, but his bow remained in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong. By the hands of the mighty God of Jacob, from there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. By the God of the Father who will help you, by the Almighty who will bless you with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lies beneath, blessings of the beast and of the womb. The blessings of your father have excelled the blessings of my ancestors. Up to the utmost bound of the everlasting hills, they shall be on the head of Joseph and on the crown of the head of him who was separate from his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father spoke to them. And he blessed them, and he blesses each one according to his blessing. Then he charged them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of the Mechleplah, I'm so bad with that word, which is before Mamre in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field of Ephron for the Hittite as a possession for the burial place. There they buried Abraham, Sarah his wife. They buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife, and there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is there were purchased from the sons of Heth. And when Jacob had finished commanding his sons, he drew his feet up into the bed and breathed his last and was gathered to his people. All right, so Jacob passes here. We have one more chapter to go, but I do want to hit some big notes, and I'm going to just start with this one. One is that there are some curses that Jacob's talking about here, where he talks about Dan having to suffer this, and these aren't like lineage curses. These are personal curses on them in particular.
Well, I'm not so sure about the Dan one, because
no, I was going to say, with the exception of, like I said, there are some things where I go back to what we're talking about with this talk, because like the tribe of Dan sits right there in the Jordan River, right? That's where, and so they're always part of this ongoing struggle. And so, yes, But as I was saying, there are some things where he's saying personally, you're going to suffer this. It's not necessarily like every person there is going to suffer that per se. But yeah, I see what you're saying too. He's also setting up.
Yeah, Dan actually kind of like neglects their inheritance and actually gets swallowed up by one of the other tribes. And in Revelations, when he lists the 12 tribes of Israel, Dan is not mentioned. Joseph is put back in as one of the sons, and Dan is nowhere to be found. So I'm sure there's another rabbit hole you could go down and try to.
We're probably going to go there.
Yeah, well, because we're getting ready to hit Revelations. But I did read that note, and I went and read the verse in Revelation where it said, and it plain as day, there is no Dan when he lists 12 tribes.
Wow. All right. Well, as I said, there's a lot going on there. It feels like you're just going through the motions, but the big one there, as I said, there's a big thing with Judah that I think is the biggest high point of this whole thing, where he's setting that up. So,
and of course Joseph gets a good report too. I mean, just because of we'll discuss that a little bit more in this last chapter.
All right, here we go. Genesis 50. Let's wrap it up. Believe it or not, we're right here. This is it. Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required for him, for such are the days required for those who are embalmed. And the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. Now, when the days of his mourning were past, Joseph spoke to the households of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in the hearing of Pharaoh, saying, My father made me swear, saying, Behold, I am dying. In my grave which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan, there you shall bury me. Now therefore, please let me go up and bury my father, and I will come back. And Pharaoh said, Go up and bury your father, and as he made you swear. So Joseph went up to bury his father, and went with him, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of the house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as the house of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's house. Only their little ones, their flocks, and their herds they left in the land of Goshen. Goshen. Goshen.
I say Goshen.
It's not Goshen. I've been saying Goshen, and people are mad. Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen. And it was a very great gathering. And they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, and they mourned there with a great and very solemn lamentation. He observed 7 days of mourning for his father. And when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad, they said, This is a deep mourning of the Egyptians. Therefore, its name was called Elbel Mizraim, which is beyond the Jordan. So his sons did for him just as he commanded them, for his sons carried him into the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of the Machpelah, before Mamre. I'll work on that in 2026, which Abraham bought with the field from the Ephron from the Hittite as property for the burial place. And after he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brothers, and all who went up with him to bury his father. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, Perhaps Joseph will hate us and may actually repay us for all the evil which we did to him. So they sent messengers to Joseph, saying, Before your father died, he commanded, saying, Thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now please forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of your father. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Bookmark that. Okay, just real quick. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face, and they said, Behold, we are your servants. Joseph said to them, Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? For as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive. Now, therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones. And he comforted them, and spoke kindly to them. So Joseph dwelt in Egypt and his father's household, and Joseph lived 110 years. Joseph saw Ephraim's children to the third generation. The children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were also brought up on Joseph's knees. And Joseph said to his brethren, I am dying, but God will surely visit you and will bring you out of this land to the land of which he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph took an oath from the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. And that's it. That's the book of Genesis. You did it. We did it. Yay. There's a lot there, and we're not going to have time to do all of it today. So one of the things we want to do is a Genesis recap, because right, didn't we talk about doing this, Matt? Because I mean, we could recap this in just 15 minutes,
or we could just do it at the beginning of our first.
Yeah. I mean, whatever episode 61 is going to be, but I do think we got to hit on these things right now. And so after this Messiah moment, there's this big moment for Joseph, and I mentioned one. So why did he cry? So Jacob dies. They all get scared because they're like, okay, Joseph's just being nice to us because Dad was alive. Now he's gonna turn on us. And so they go back to being fearful. And Joseph cried because I think it hurt him so bad to realize that he had already forgiven them. We've already moved past that point. And
this is
and it's hard, and I understand why it's hard, because there's the most famous line in that whole chapter is, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good.
Yep.
And it's hard for us to wrap our minds around that, especially if we are the ones who made the evil choice. And I think the other Messiah moment that happens in chapter 50 is the thing that we all have the hardest time with, whether it's forgiving other people, because we can't find it in us to let it go, because unlike Joseph, we just don't have it. Like, man, that burned me so bad. And because again, we're like, yeah, Joseph's a great guy. His brothers wanted to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of killing him, they just sold him off into slavery. And that one part in this book, in this story, in that particular, I was going to say, not in Genesis. There's so many stories in Genesis. As I said, it's hard to lump it up into one discussion. However, in this one particular moment, there's that scene that goes back to him begging them. Like, his soul was crying out, please don't do this to me. And this is their brother. And so it's hard for them. I understand why they can't grasp that forgiveness. But as I said, that's the two things there. And that's the other thing we can't do, is the bad thing that we did, either the bad thing that somebody did to us that we can't forgive, right, that we cannot let go of, or the bad thing that we did that we can't let go of. We can't understand why God loves us. And this is even the harder part, is for people who struggle with this recurring sin, which is like, I'm struggling with this again, and you've already forgiven me. And we don't understand how that forgiveness works. Yeah. And like, I not only forgave you in that moment, but I realized in that moment that you were going to slip 2 times more. And I'm going to be okay with that, because you're eventually going to figure it out, as long as you stay focused in the right place.
Because we see when he's being pulled away that it makes clear that he is screaming for his life.
Yes.
Don't do this. At that moment, he had no idea this was God's plan. And then for him to come to that realization all these years later, to the point where he can forgive his brothers of what they did, that is the kind of forgiveness, like you said, that we just don't have we have a hard time grasping that.
Yes. So I think that's really, as I said, as this kind of ends the book, and this is the nation of Israel, the tribes of Israel ending up in Egypt. And that's the other thing that we're going to talk about. And as I said, I don't know I don't know what to say to Exodus is so good.
Please read
Please
Exodus.
read it. And I feel like this is the same moment we had when we were done with Mark, and we were like, man, so there you go. We got through the Gospel of Mark, and now you know Jesus' ministry. And then it's like, but if you really want to keep going, you got to go right into Acts.
Yeah.
As I've stated before, and I know we talked about, the Gospel of Jesus, that is great, and you should read all 4 books and have the comparisons and the way they're written and how they're different. And it's so phenomenal. And then go right into Acts. And the same goes here. As I said, when you get into Exodus, there's this great, so it goes to Exodus, and then there's Deuteronomy, and then, what is it?
It's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Lamentations, I think.
Feels that. There's going to be some ones that you struggle with. Because I said there's some instructional stuff where you have to read like chapters on how to build a tabernacle, which they move it.
Yes.
But all this stuff is great, especially when you go and see how it relates and how it goes back to the cyclical
and the way
part
things
of
are
this
today,
New Testament, Old Testament.
When you start seeing all that stuff the way they've got it laid out, go search it and see what it looks like in real life. What they're talking about, there's 3D images of it online everywhere where they've actually laid out by the description in the book what this temple would have looked like in the wilderness.
Oh yeah,
and it's fascinating. And all that stuff is fascinating.
It's really fascinating because when you actually see it, it looks like a cross.
Yes.
And in the middle of it is where they're doing the sacrificing. Like, so right in the middle of the cross.
Because the way the tribes
were set up. It's amazing. So do all of the stuff. It is, and we may go back and do that. As I said, what we sort of had a trajectory of, we wanted to go to, where do you go? We went the gospel first, the beginning. And now we're going to go next to the book of Revelation, which we feel like is going to be a lot of fun and a lot of,
We'll see.
Yeah, I as I said, I think it's going to be good. But
we will touch on a closure for Genesis before we jump into Revelation. Probably in the same episode.
At the end of it, it becomes so much about Joseph and Jacob and blessings. And there's a part of the Bible that reads, especially Old Testament, and I'm not saying the New Testament doesn't have it, where it sort of reads like, where again it becomes repetitive, or it's where it feels like you're caught up in that. She swallowed a horse, to swallowed a cow, to swallowed a spotter, that wiggled and jiggled and tickled inside her, and it feels like you have to say that again, and then they add the extra thing. Yeah. All of that stuff can be important, and there's just a reason why it was written that way. There's nothing wasted on that. As I said, the redundancy of reading it sometimes, as we well know, because we skipped over some of the lineage parts of this. But again, we hit on it. So you're right. We're going to come back on it. But there's, as I said, what happens is we forget. This goes back to when we talked at the beginning of the show about Christmas and that tree. This starts at the beginning, like in the beginning, and the actual creation from nothing, that God came in and created all of this and had a plan, went south quick. And then all of a sudden, all of this is set up. And then we go from, we went from the towers and, there's so much in Genesis. And that was why we wanted to do it, because again, as I said, it's the study of, to me, it's the history of our origin, of our creation. And
the history of our belief, right? This is where it all began. This is what sets up the lineage for the Messiah to come in and give us that pathway back to God.
There's Noah, the Towers of Babel. Yeah. There's all these little weird spiritual realms, and so we'll have a quick maybe recap of Genesis, kind of get you set up, and then sort of we're not, as I said, we're going to sort of introduce Revelation. That's going to be our.
We may get started in chapter 1 or talk about the author or something. We'll figure it out.
But we do want to say to all of you out there, Merry Christmas for sure. I know it's
and keep Christ first in Christmas.
Please do. We go back to our discussion at the beginning of the podcast today. That's what this is about. If whether you want to, was it a pagan celebration? You can make whatever you do in life, do it for Christ and do it with Christ in your heart, and you can make lunch break at your work Christian.
Yeah, and
So
I'll say one personal note. I've always thought, well, as I've gotten older, it seems like we could take some lessons and learn how to be better gift receivers. It seems like to me a lot of people expect gifts and don't really know how to appreciate a gift. If somebody gives you something out of kindness, you should be thankful. No matter what it is, no matter if you wanted it, if somebody took the time and thought you deserved a gift, accept it kindly.
And I would say this, no matter what you give, we always talk about be cheerful in it and give it in good heart. Because especially, as I said, oftentimes we forget when we're trying to bless others by doing something for others, because we get caught in us doing some blessing. What we really realize is that what we're doing is blessing us.
Right.
So
you're paying it forward. You're taking the blessing you've been given and giving it to somebody else.
As I've said, how many times you've given something that you thought wasn't significant in anything and saw the biggest smile. It was definitely well worth it. But Heavenly Father, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to talk about the book of Genesis and the creation of our world. That we just want to thank you for being a part of our discussion. We want to pray for everyone to have a wonderful Christmas. And just thank you again for this opportunity. And we thank you for all things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, episode 61. We will begin.
About to reveal some stuff.
Reveal. That's revelation. All right. We'll see you next time.
Take care.